In Venezuela, the acting president talks about amnesty for political prisoners. The Venezuelan public, though, is still waiting to see what actually happens.
We have to be optimistic. I am optimistic, but we cannot be naive.
I'm Marco Werman.
And I'm Carolyn Beeler. The latest from Venezuela today on a possible amnesty deal. Also, the Winter Games are about to kick off in Milan, where some Italians are not happy about the U.S. sending ICE agents as part of its Olympic security team.
We do not accept that a militia of some kind, that it's basically become the personal militia of the President of the United States, can come to our country, can come to our city.
We'll also take you to the mountains of Cambodia and listen to what hope sounds like for an endangered species.
That's all ahead on The World.
This is The World. I'm Marco Werman.
And I'm Carolyn Beeler. It's been a month since the U.S. military stormed into Venezuela to capture its longtime president, Nicolás Maduro. The country is showing some signs of change. Acting President Delcy Rodríguez is under pressure from the Trump administration to fix the economy and ease repression. Her government passed a law to loosen controls over the oil business and made small moves to open up the political space.
Most recently, Rodriguez made a surprise announcement about a sweeping amnesty bill that could free hundreds of political prisoners. The World's Tibisay Isaiah looks at what that might actually mean.
The youngest political prisoner in Venezuela right now is a 4-month-old baby. A year ago, a young woman named Michaelis Borges was arrested in Caracas while she was pregnant. She was taken from the street without a warrant, and for months, her family didn't know where she was. The story blew up on social media last summer when Borges was about to give birth.
Michaelis merece tener su hijo en libertad.
Un bebé de 3 meses usado para forzar la entrega de un militar disidente.
¿Imaginas tener que dar a luz en una cárcel?
Es un bebé que no ha cometido ningún delito. Es un bebé que ya es víctima de la represión en Venezuela. Es un bebé.
Human rights groups say Borges didn't commit any crime. She was detained only because her partner, a former military officer, left the country after being accused of conspiracy against the government. And because they were unable to reach him, authorities went after his family. Borges gave birth in prison, and both she and her baby remain behind bars. Before Nicolás Maduro was captured, families of political prisoners were often too afraid to speak out. Now, many are camping out in front of prisons, holding vigils, pressing for answers, and some students have joined them in small protests across the country. 350 people considered political prisoners have been released so far this year, according to Foro Penal. That's the main group that tracks detentions in Venezuela. But hundreds more are still behind bars. Jenice Carrion's husband disappeared in November.
Mi nombre es Jenice Carrión y estoy aquí en esta lucha.
I met her outside a prison called Zona 7 in Caracas about 2 weeks ago. She was convinced her husband was being held inside. She still doesn't know why he was detained, but she believes it may be linked to TikTok videos where he criticized the government. Carrión was at the prison 4 days ago when news spread that the government might pass a bill freeing political prisoners. She sent me a video of families celebrating.
Yo me emocioné demasiado, o sea, era una cosa muy increíble que uno decía, oye, no lo puedo creer.
Carrión says she was overwhelmed. She couldn't believe it. The amnesty could lift restrictions on some 18,000 people in Venezuela. About 600 are still in jail, and the rest were released over the past decade but still can't leave the country or close their cases. But key details about this amnesty proposal are still unclear. Alfredo Romero is the director of the NGO Foro Penal.
There is not a bill already. I mean, we don't know the conditions. We don't know the elements of this project. It's not even a project. We don't know what is a proposal exactly.
Romero says there is no timeline and no clarity about who would qualify for the amnesty. He also worries the law could protect regime officials accused of crimes against humanity.
Because if the amnesty is going to be an instrument in order for all perpetrators to be excluded from responsibilities of crimes committed, then it's something that we're going to oppose.
For years, the United Nations has documented patterns of torture inside Venezuela's detention centers. Romero says his group has also been reporting those.
If you show me the menu of torture mechanisms, of torture methods, I can tell you that I've heard all of them. Whatever you tell me, I've heard about it.
He says most of the people still in prison today are soldiers, police officers, or their relatives, and that they are also the ones who face the harshest treatment. Romero says it's meant to keep the rest of the military in line. And he warns that freeing some political prisoners won't mean much if the security system stays the same.
The monster is still in Venezuela, and the monster can bite at any time.
He says prisoners could be freed today and jailed again tomorrow. Former political prisoner and opposition leader Freddy Guevara says U.S. pressure is key.
In the real world that we are now, the only concessions that are happening is because they feel the threat of external force.
Regime members could face the same fate of Maduro if they don't comply with U.S. demands. And without that pressure, Guevara warns, Venezuela could slide back into full authoritarian rule, which is why, he says, any amnesty must truly end repression for good.
We have to be optimistic. I am optimistic, but we cannot be naive. And to prevent, the bad outcomes to happen, we need to remain not only vigilant, but with very concrete, actionable path.
That path, he says, requires U.S. bipartisan support to help ease repression and allow for a transition to democracy in Venezuela. For the World, I'm Tibisay Sea.
In Libya yesterday, unknown gunmen assassinated the son of the late strongman Moammar Gadhafi. The complete details are still murky, but associates of 53-year-old Seif al-Islam Gadhafi say he was found shot to death at his home. At one time, Seif was seen as the heir apparent to his father. This was before the elder Gadhafi was ousted from power and then killed during the uprising of 2011. Since then, Libya has been fractured by civil war and more recently kept together by a fragile ceasefire. Earlier today, I spoke with Libya analyst Jalel Harshawi, who is in the capital, Tripoli. I asked him to explain the background of Seif al-Islam's killing.
I think it's important to understand that Seif al-Islam was in a very revolutionary city called Zintan, which is located roughly 180 kilometers to the southwest of Tripoli, where I'm calling you from here. And Zintan was deeply anti-Gaddafi. And when Seif al-Islam was first made prisoner, he was officially a prisoner, so there was no lack of consistency there. But starting in 2017, he started basically enjoying a level of freedom, and the family that used to be providing the prison became basically his protector. So you ended up within a very, very fragmented city with a contradictory situation that meant a lot of tensions.
So Seif al-Islam's political team released a statement. What did they say?
Well, the news actually came from them. And by the way, his team was more important than he was. He was not someone who could maintain a cogent discourse. He didn't have any particular vision. He was not able to do YouTube videos in a country that is really reliant on social media for political life. And the reason he was not able to do that, he just didn't have the mental health to be able to sustain that kind of rhetoric. So a lot of the narratives surrounding this person came from his advisors and what people have learned to call the team of Seif al-Islam. So those are the associates that actually broke the news yesterday. And of course, when they said it, everybody believed them. They knew that it was not fake news because it came from his direct associates.
Right. They said there were 4 masked men who stormed his house.
Yeah.
I'm curious, why would he stay in this city if everybody there hated him?
Well, it happened gradually. First of all, as I said, he spent the first few years there within that particular house as a prisoner. And then some level of sympathy flourished between him and the family that was responsible for keeping him prisoner. And that's why they gradually became friends, and the family became his protector. And in many regards, it was the safest place for him in the entire country. He would sometimes leave the city of Zintan that I've been mentioning for the last few minutes. He would go further to the south. For example, there was an important moment in November 2021 where he declared himself a candidate for the presidential elections. He did it in a city located much farther to the south. He did it in Sabha. But he had to receive a lot of protection, including from Russians, to just be able to appear for a few minutes and then disappear again in the wilderness. So, as I said, paradoxically, that particular house was arguably the safest place for him in the entire country of Libya. And of course, he couldn't leave the country.
So, Jalal, paint us a picture of who Saif al-Islam Gaddafi was. What's his story?
There's a lot of people who liked him until yesterday because he was the symbol of his father, who was in power from 1969 until 2011. But him as a person never really struck Libyans as someone with a strong character. He had a political career before 2011. That's why he represented such a strong symbol, particularly in the context of the elections that almost happened in Libya in December 2021. This is very recent. If those elections had taken place, I think he would have earned probably more than 20% of the votes, but mostly because of the symbolism here, not because he was particularly efficient or particularly smart or particularly talented as a political leader. He was just a way of crystallizing the nostalgia for his father in a country where people are really sick and tired of the post-2011 elites, mainly because of corruption. So you see, I'm painting a picture that is really ambivalent. He was not really admired, but he was still a very powerful symbol.
What became of kind of the perception among the Libyan population of him? Were they as scared of him as Muammar?
No, they were not scared of him. You know why? Because he was not a military figure. He was never the head of a brigade. He never carried any military responsibilities. He never ordered anyone killed or executed. All of those things were done by the family, but not by him.
So I gather these days there's not much Saif al-Islam Gaddafi nostalgia.
There is, but not Saif al-Islam nostalgia, but Moammar Gadhafi nostalgia that will continue to exist. But the difference now that Saif was killed yesterday is that there's no way of embodying this sentiment. Now, this important part of the country that remains nostalgic, that wants to return to what the country was before 2011, they don't have a champion anymore. They don't have a representative anymore. They don't have a candidate anymore. They would not be able to unify behind someone else.
What is the Muammar Gadhafi nostalgia about? I mean, he was slaughtered and his body thrown in a storm drain.
They remember the dignity and the pride of being in a peaceful country that was prosperous. That's why I reminded you of the high oil prices in the 2000s.
Right.
Like if you had come here in Tripoli in 2006, 2007, 2008, it was a comfortable country to be in.
I was in Tripoli in 2006, and you are absolutely right.
Yeah. So it was a little bit North Korean-esque in terms of freedoms. But they look at the current reality, they look at runaway inflation, and they remember vaguely, because you have a lot of false memories as well, they remember that it was vaguely better in those years. So it's a way of saying to the current elites, the post-2011 elites, go to hell. From an electoral perspective, the most efficient way of saying that is to vote for a remnant of Moammar Gadhafi. And that was the status. That was the role that he played until he was killed yesterday.
So pull back for a moment now, Jalal. What is the latest on what's happening politically in Libya right now? What's the state of things?
Well, believe it or not, in the grand scheme of things, Saif al-Islam was not important. I don't think his death is that important. People don't think about Gaddafi. They think about the economic crisis. They think about the structural fragmentation in terms of security, in terms of administration. They think about excessive spending by two governments, not one government, but two governments. That's the problem. There's no war, but there's this kind of concern. So you notice that it didn't mention elections because there's no elections to speak of. And the Gaddafi idea is not something that is present on a day-to-day basis at all.
Libya analyst Jalal Harshoui speaking with us from the capital, Tripoli. You're listening to The World.
This is The World. I'm Carolyn Beeler. Italy, Winter Olympics, this Friday. For the first time in their history, the Winter Games are being hosted by two cities. Milan, Italy's fashion capital, and Cortina d'Ampezzo in the Dolomite Mountains. They are a few hundred miles apart, which may prove challenging for athletes and spectators trying to navigate between the two cities on the region's picturesque and narrow roads. That's just the start of potential problems facing this year's Winter Games, as we hear from the World's Europe correspondent, Orla Berry.
As far as Winter Olympics go, it's hard to beat Cortina d'Ampezzo for its location. Snow-covered limestone peaks rise up above the small alpine town like something from a fairy tale. The resort is already well known among ski lovers with money and Hollywood stars. George Clooney is apparently a regular. It's not so much of a fairy tale, though, for the athletes and their coaches.
It's great. It's a nice village. Everything is working. Food is good. The beds are good. We have enough space. So we are happy.
Hessel Evertse is the Belgian team leader for ice skating. Cortina d'Ampezzo has hosted the Winter Olympics before, back in 1956. And one of the big selling points for the organisers this year was that the region already has lots of facilities in place. But
it's the most dispersed games in history.
Andy Mia, a professor at the University of Salford in Manchester, has been researching the Olympic Games over the past 2 decades.
To get a sense of having been at these games, it's going to be a lot harder for people when it's so far geographically to get from A to B. I don't think many people will be going from Milan to Cortina in a day to see some sports. It will have to be you're either in one place or another.
Skating events like ice hockey, for example, will take place in Milan, while most of the Olympic and Paralympic competitions are being held in areas spread across the Alps. Kirsty Coventry, the president of the International Olympic Committee, said this week she's not worried about the distances people will have to travel.
We will need to see how the games unfold. Yes, there's a few longer distances from venue to venue, but everyone is very prepared. And this
Locals don't see it that way. A few days ago, Italian media reported that a cable car being built to carry spectators to the women's alpine skiing events in Cortina won't be finished on time. And residents say the site is also prone to landslides. That's not their only concern. On Saturday, hundreds of people gathered in the centre of Milan to protest at the news that ICE agents from the US will be coming to the Games. Demonstrators held up signs that read, "We want snow, not ice," in Milan.
We do not accept that a militia of some kind, that it's basically become the personal militia of the President of the United States, can come to our country, can come to our city without us acknowledging the fact that he has spilled blood, he has spilled violence.
Milan's mayor, Giuseppe Sala, also said that ICE personnel were not welcome in his city.
Le Olimpiadi, continuiamo a dircelo, sono un momento di pace, di fratellanza, addirittura si parla.
The Olympics, they tell us, is a moment for peace. It's all about brotherhood. And then we invite this militia that kills in America, that enters people's homes without any authorization. I cannot accept this, he said. US authorities say ICE agents will be there to help with security, but will stay in a control room and not on the streets. Mayor Sala has faced his own controversies linked to the Winter Games. Last summer, Italian prosecutors opened an investigation into a series of property deals in Milan. Several of the projects under scrutiny are linked to the Olympics. Dozens of people were implicated, including the mayor, who denies any wrongdoing. Elisa Orlando, an anti-corruption activist in Turin, says allegations of misconduct around the Olympics are hardly anything new.
No, it's not unusual. Actually, it has been the norm until now. There's non-transparency and almost complete unaccountability.
A new campaign called Open Olympics 2026 is trying to tackle that. Orlando's organisation Libera and around 20 other civil society groups in Italy launched the campaign to push for greater transparency. The organisers, she says, have agreed to publish their financial dealings on a single public portal that is updated every 45 days. And the data has already produced some interesting results.
around, for instance, environmental impact assessment that have been skipped for 60% of the projects. Costs for the projects have over doubled over the years.
And Orlando says they discovered that more than half of the projects linked to the Olympics won't actually be finished until after the Games are over. The organisers have accused the group of being against the Games altogether. Orlando says that's far from the truth. Meanwhile, the Italian government is hoping the event will give the country's economy a much-needed boost.
La mia speranziella è chiaramente arrivi anche
Giancarlo Giorgetti, the Italian economy minister, said his hope was that the Games give Italy a helping hand, a little bit of healthy doping for the country's growth, he said. The 60,000 spectators expected to pack San Siro Stadium in Milan for Friday's opening ceremony might help with that. J.D. Vance, the US Vice President, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio are due to be there too. IOC President Kirsty Coventry is hoping that by then any problems will be forgotten.
What is keeping my faith alive is that when that opening ceremony happens, and those athletes start competing, suddenly the world remembers the magic and the spirit that the Games have, and they get to be inspired.
And for the nearly 3,000 athletes competing, they'll be hoping it all ends in gold. For The World, I'm Orla Barry.
Pope Leo XIV is facing a new challenge from inside the Catholic Church. It's from a fringe group of ultra-conservative clergy based in Switzerland.
Priests from the Society of St. Pius X say they plan to ordain new bishops without the Vatican's blessing beginning in July. Under Catholic doctrine, only the Pope can consecrate bishops. Ordaining them without his approval means automatic excommunication. In fact, the founder of this Swiss group was excommunicated when he consecrated 4 new bishops back in 1988.
This is all rooted in a theological disagreement. The Society of St. Pius X rejects the modernizing reforms of the 1960s, called Vatican II. For example, its priests still celebrate Catholic Mass in Latin. The group is not very big, but they do represent a larger group of traditionalists within the church. Massimo Fagioli is a Catholic theologian at Trinity College in Dublin.
The important question is what's going to happen in those groups within the Catholic Church that are in communion with the Pope, but are also theologically very close to the Society of St. Pius X. That's the real question.
Previous popes have tried to reach a compromise with the Society of St. Pius X. On Tuesday, the Vatican said it is still open to negotiations.
More global stories are still coming your way. You're with The World. This is The World. I'm Marco Werman. After years of civil war and the ouster of a brutal dictator, Syria is showing signs of becoming a society based on the rule of law. Officials in the interim government of Ahmed al-Sharaa say trials for former members of the Assad regime could begin this year. That is just one challenge after nearly a decade and a half of a brutal conflict that killed 500,000 people and turned many millions into refugees. As Deborah Amos reports from Damascus, the trials are a major challenge for the country and a test of whether Syria can confront its past and define its future.
Just north of Damascus stands Sednaya Prison, Syria's most notorious detention center. Survivors and human rights groups called it the human slaughterhouse. Under the Assad regime, tens of thousands passed through its gates. Prisoners were tortured, starved, executed, and buried in mass graves.
Yes, ladies, we are here now.
52-year-old Fouad Nael spent 21 years behind bars. He escaped on December 8, 2024, the day the Assad regime collapsed and the guards vanished.
Thank God they ran away, because if they didn't, they will kill us. We just break the doors and we get out.
Now, Naal guides visitors through Sednaya, pointing out an execution room and a narrow, airless cell.
This is the place you were?
Yes, I were here.
How many people were with you?
We were 8, only 8.
How many survived?
1.
He leads an association of Sednaya survivors, representing 5,000 families who lost fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, not only during the past 14 years of war, but over the brutal decades of Assad family rule.
They killed us for 60 years, and we were silent all the time. Now it's our time. We want just our rights, just our rights.
Patience is wearing thin in a country where trauma is everywhere, says Dr. Mahmoud Aswad, a government advisor and head of Lawyers and Doctors for Human Rights.
Majority now giving the government the time to do something, or they will do the work by their own way.
Their own way means revenge killings, he warns.
And this is really risky.
How patient can people be? Have you been able to say this is going to be years?
This is something very clear. It's a long-term process, but at the same time, they need to see something.
Government officials insist Syrians will see something this year.
My name is Zahra El-Barazi. I'm the Deputy President of the National Commission on Transitional Justice in Syria.
Barazi says trial preparations are underway. While top figures of the deposed regime fled to Russia, thousands of former officials, at least 4,000 by some estimates, are now in custody.
It will take some time, but I think 2026 is when we're going to start seeing trials. At the same time, there are many other challenges.
Resources are scarce, investigators overwhelmed, judges from the former regime replaced, leaving serious gaps in the judiciary. But pressure is building, says Barazi. So after consultations across the country, Syrian war crimes trials will be conducted by Syrian judges in a domestic court.
We don't want international judges. I think they're also coming out of a time where they feel very let down by the international community. Our revolution was won with our own hands, so we will try our own people. And it's a process that will be much quicker.
To prepare, Barazi and different teams have traveled to Rwanda, Bosnia, Argentina, and other places that conducted their own accountability trials after repressive regimes. Mounting one trial this year is realistic, says advisor Stephen Rapp. He's a former U.S. State Department ambassador for war crimes.
At the moment, they're going after 5 of the most serious offenders. I think from a realistic standpoint, one has to begin with the people you have in custody and prove that you can do an effective case and that it's a fair process.
A fair process is new for Syria, a trial based on evidence, says advisor Bill Wiley. He's the head of CIJA, the Center for Justice and Accountability, that amassed more than 1 million pages of official Assad regime documents over the years of war by teams of Syrian activists. Evidence used in Syrian war crimes trials in Europe. Now, that trove of evidence will be key in the first case heard in a Syrian court.
There's a tremendous amount of evidence on those 5 individuals. Just what our organization holds is hundreds to thousands of pages of material pertaining to those individuals.
A monumental task to prepare evidence to international legal standards, he says, understandable to the accused, the defense lawyers, and the prosecuting judge.
It's bound up with their vision of what they want Syria to be. Effectively a state for the first time, or certainly the first time since the Assads took over, rooted in the rule of law.
A family regime that held power for more than 50 years. Meanwhile, Syrians continue to live with the residue of loss, says Safina Bakay, founder of the Gardenia Choir, rehearsing for a concert in Damascus. She says grief has become a collective act at their concerts.
In every performance, we cry. We can't get over crying. We need to cry for maybe another 5 years.
After decades of enforced silence, concerts at the city's opera house are healing, she says. But justice and accountability must also play a part.
Although we are all so tired, people won't settle for less than what they bled for and paid all the huge prices for. They will not do it for less than what they asked for. dignity and feeling that they are not less human beings than anyone else in the world.
Justice may come slowly under enormous strain, but to document, to judge, to see a public reckoning is essential for stability in Syria and could mark a new and consequential chapter for the country. For the world, I'm Deborah Amos, Damascus.
In the forests of Cambodia's central Cardamom Mountains, conservationists are listening for a very particular sound. This is the call and response song of endangered gibbons, recorded by scientists who track their population in those mountains. Ratha Sao led the project for Conservation International. Ratha, I had to look up pictures of gibbons to remind myself which primate they are. Can you refresh our memories about these creatures that you're studying?
Oh, they are native to South and Southeast Asia, including Cambodia. And this kind of pileated gibbon, they almost live entirely on the forest canopy, and they have very complex vocalizations. And they are characterized by long arms that are specialized anatomy allows them to swing from one to another trees with a remarkable speed.
So they live up in the canopy and swing among the trees. Are they the white furry ones?
The female one is a bit white gray, and the adult one for the male is a bit dark gray.
Okay. So they are endangered. How many are thought to be left globally?
Yeah, for Cambodia, the central cardamom is harboring the largest population of the pileated gibbon. But the other part of Cambodia in the central plain, in another wildlife sanctuary, an estimate of about 12,000 individuals, but their habitat fragmentations and all degraded habitat really threaten their population.
So they're endangered because their habitat is being deforested or broken up by human development? Is that what you mean by degraded?
Yeah, in Southeast Asia and South Asia, there's a lot of development and infrastructure development, mining, illegal logging. So illegal logging is one of the most driving factors that lead to the habitat loss. But this is one of the aim that we really want to do the estimation of the pileated gibbon in our site, because it is the last stronghold and the very less impact to the forest of this pileated gibbon species.
Can you take us now to the central Cardamom Mountains and set the scene for us? What does it look like there?
So Central Cardamom Mountain are located in the southwestern Cambodia, and this habitat is characterized by a very diverse ecosystem, including evergreen and semi-evergreen forests, monsoon woodlands, mangroves, and many river systems that drain to the Gulf of Thailand.
So you set up microphones and recorders all over these mountains to record the gibbons. What did you discover?
So we get more than 870 calls across the landscape. So we deployed our acoustic meters at 40 locations.
40 locations?
Very separate. 40 locations, 40. So that is really surprised me. We expect only 10 or less than 10 calls at each location. So with this survey, we just deployed in the forest without disturbing or very minimum that disturb the forest. And that is very good, in particular with the animals that use the vocalization to communicate.
And so does that tell you anything about the health of the population or the ecosystem in the Cardamom Mountains? What was your takeaway from this research?
So the takeaway is that the sound of the pileated gibbon in this area is a sound of hope, because where we find the pileated gibbon, it is an indication of the forest health. It means there is very limited illegal logging or invasion by human. So when we hear the sound of our pileated gibbon across time. It's helped us to take a message that the forest here is stable and it is really a stronghold for the community.
So I'm curious about the content of the calls themselves, and we have another one to play here. So it sounds to me like there are two gibbons there. Can you tell me what they're saying to each other?
Yeah, they are the adult pileated gibbon. They are dueting. It means that they are communicating between the male and female.
Duetting?
So this is, duetting.
What are they saying to each other? This is like a mating pair?
Yeah, they are mating pair. They are mating. Actually, in terms of like what activity or what message they're doing, there could be possibility that they are like calling for mating. So one possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And another one, if the male, they make a very loud and long call. So this is kind of a sign that this is their territory, something like that.
Ratha, you yourself are from Cambodia. I wonder if it was nice to learn that this species is doing well in your home country.
Yeah. Actually, I really love when we went out to the forest, and even if we are staying in the camp, the area that we did not deploy the audiometers, we also hear the call of the gibbon, and that really gives me joy. And I understand that they are doing great in our side, in our landscape.
I wanted to play one more piece of sound that you recorded before we let you go and ask you if you can tell us anything about what is happening here. So let's listen to that. Can you tell us what's happening here?
Yeah, they are dueting. So like one is calling and another one is reply, "Oh, I'm here. Hey, where are you? I'm here. Where are you? I'm here." Yeah, this kind of call, they try to call where are the families. So if like a smaller one is far away, they're trying to call as well.
Ratha Sao is a biodiversity manager from Cambodia with Conservation International. He led research in the central Cardamom Mountains tracking endangered gibbons.
This winter, around 20 monks from a Vietnamese Buddhist temple in Texas are walking from their home in Fort Worth to Washington, D.C. The 2,000-mile trek is to promote peace and ask for federal recognition of the Buddha's day of birth. The monks have drawn thousands of supporters along the way. They've trudged through snow, ice, and frigid temperatures on the final leg of their journey. WUNC reporter Aaron Sanchez-Guerra checked in on the marchers' progress while they were in North Carolina.
Hundreds waited for hours in hopes of witnessing just a few minutes of the peaceful monks and their acclaimed Walk for Peace. When the monks finally passed the crowds on the side of Highway 64, the people kept quiet. Men and women put their hands together in prayer out of reverence and gratitude.
Bless you all. Much love and many blessings to all of you.
Tears ran down some of their faces. Others knelt before the monks. The monks silently smiled as they walked by. They briefly stopped to take a flower from a little girl and softly tapped her head with it. Cynthia Watson says she was standing at the right time in the right place when a monk handed her a flower.
And I don't even know if I can drive home. I'm shaking.
She was ecstatic.
I'm so excited. I am so excited.
Suddenly, the monks stopped. They approached a woman holding a sign. Then they began to chant. Lillian Wilson sobbed as they chanted. Wilson says the woman with the sign was her sister. She asked the monks for a blessing as she recovered from a bone marrow transplant.
I can't contain myself. I just can't. It's a beautiful moment. Absolutely beautiful moment.
The Walk for Peace amassed a large social media following, allowing people around the country to track their journey. That's how Lin U found out about it. He's an immigrant from Myanmar. He says the Walk for Peace matters to him because Buddhist monks led a brave protest against the military government in his home country.
We people love peace. Every people love peace, so why they walk in, we don't care, we don't know that, but it's the walk for peace.
Here in America, he said, they can march freely. Something about the monks and their universal message of peace, love, and kindness has resonated with many, drawing diverse crowds who have religiously followed the monks' journey. Jenny Flynn is Nepalese American, and she traveled from New Jersey. She says she's on a spiritual journey like the monks are.
Peace loving, and then I grew up in a Buddhist household, so I try to practice Buddhism.
Flynn says she's been following them since the previous day.
It was like so quick. It happens like a flash, when they come and then they're gone. And I feel like that wasn't enough for me, so here I am.
Chapel Hill resident Lynn Johnson believes their message of unity is a solution to a time of division in America.
And I think it's what our nation needs. And I think it's the one thing right now that people can come together about, and that's bringing peace and being kind to each other.
Things can improve in the country, Johnson says, if we can give peace a chance. For The World, I'm Aaron Sanchez Guerra.
This is The World. I'm Marco Werman. A statement issued by the White House this week marking the Mexican-American War of the 1840s has provoked a backlash in Mexico. Officials at the White House called the conflict a legendary victory that, quote, reasserted American sovereignty and expanded the promise of American independence across our majestic continent, end quote. Many historians call that a distortion of history. Diplomats like Arturo Sarucán, a former Mexican ambassador to the U.S., he went further and called it a provocation wrapped in a threat.
This is not only spiking the ball in the end zone, it's the diplomatic version of flipping the bird.
To better understand the Mexican-American War and its echoes in the present day, we reached out to Albert Camarillo. He's a professor of history at Stanford. So, Albert, let's start by revisiting 1846 USA. Texas is admitted to the Union. The Oregon Treaty takes the U.S. territorial footprint up to the northwest, but not yet the southwest. In what is today South Texas, however, fighting breaks out in a disputed border zone between the Nueces River and the Rio Grande, territory Mexico is still considered its own. Who started that war?
Well, it really begins as a violent clash in 1836, what's called the Texas Revolution, when American citizens who came to Texas, invited oftentimes by Mexico to help settle the northern borderlands of Mexico, they began to violate the agreements with Mexico and start violent clashes. It ends in the Texas Revolt of 1836 and the acquisition of Texas, disputed, of course, by Mexico for the next 10 years, which is going to really be the basis for why there's going to be a war 10 years later, 1846.
How well resourced was each side in terms of military?
Well, the Mexican army was equipped to engage in battles, right? But I think it underestimated the effort of these American rebels when the war breaks out over so-called skirmishes on the border. So that provokes the war. And over time, I think within the case of those two armies clashing, Mexico, now you have to understand, is only a quarter century from the start of its republic and does not have an army that I think can counter U.S. forces coming in.
Yeah, I mean, indeed, U.S. troops end up going south and capturing Mexico City in 1847, the only time a foreign army has occupied the capital in Mexico's modern history. How did the war end then a year later?
Well, basically, Mexico had no choice. It was either going to negotiate and there were people in the White House and in Congress arguing this is our opportunity to take all of Mexico. But there was pushback with that. So it's not just the northern half of Mexico that the administration, James K. Polk administration, was intent on annexing. In the end, they settled for what was the Rio Grande border, the border that we know today, most of it just excluding a portion of what is southern Arizona today.
Former President Ulysses Grant later denounced the war as, quote, one of the most unjust ever waged by a stronger against a weaker nation, end quote. Mexicans who lived in ceded territories were promised rights, but then denied them, right?
Well, the most egregious violation of that treaty was the property rights guaranteed to that 100,000 plus Mexican citizens who were within a year promised if they stayed in the territories, which the vast majority did, they would become American citizens with the full rights thereof. But we know, I've written about this, other people have written about this, those property rights were violated. And most people lost their lands over the course of a decade or 2 decades from South Texas to California. So yes, and then what happens in the second half of the 19th century is a version of what we see in race relations in American society in the 19th century and carrying into the 20th century. That is, basically, Mexicans become segregated, their rights are violated, and it's a new race of people that come into the American national domain as a result of that war.
Supporters of the war invoked manifest destiny, of course, the belief that the United States was divinely ordained to expand westward. How does that worldview persist today as the U.S. projects power across the Western Hemisphere?
Well, we've not seen it articulated, what's being called the Trump version, if you will, of the Monroe Doctrine. Maybe 100 years ago, plus we have examples of American imperialism, 1898, the Rough Riders, the acquisition of territories around the world by the United States. But we've not seen the glorification of this kind of imperialist impulse in modern American history.
The White House statement reads, "Guided by our victory on the fields of Mexico 178 years ago, I have spared no effort in defending our southern border against invasion." What are Mexicans supposed to read between those lines?
Oh, I can see why there has been reaction on the part of Mexican officials and intellectuals and others. That is, this is a mark, an indelible mark on the history of Mexico and its relationship with the United States. And when we hear President Trump talk about going into Venezuela, kidnapping its leader, going into other places, the possible acquisition of Greenland. I think what it does is that it elevates again this really difficult, problematic strain in American history about the power that the United States military has and its aggressiveness. And if it wishes to do so, as it has in the past, it will do so again. And that's what's so troubling to people in Mexico, around the world, quite frankly. So it's not just Mexico, U.S., other countries on the target for Trump are really concerned about these words, this articulation of a new Monroe Doctrine, if you will.
Albert Camarillo, professor of history at Stanford, thank you very much for guiding us through this history.
Pleasure to be with you today.
Curling, the sport where you slide a big stone down a strip of ice, kicked off the 2026 Olympic Games today. The sport is about 500 years old. In the early days, any old stone could be used, but now elite curlers only use granite from one specific island in Scotland. Listen for that story tomorrow on The World.
The World is produced by GBH and PRX, broadcasting weekdays from the Nan and Bill Harris studio in Boston and from the Department of Communication at UC San Diego. Find us online anytime at theworld.org and find our original reporting on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to our channel there. I'm Marco Werman.
And I'm Carolyn Beeler. Join us back here tomorrow.
The World is supported by the Carnegie Corporation of New York, working to reduce political polarization through philanthropic support for education, democracy, and peace. More information at carnegie.org. By the Lumina Foundation, committed to a fair, universal system for learning beyond high school that offers every American the chance for a better life. LuminaFoundation.org. By the PRX Ambassador Council, whose members include Judy Piggott, the Gruber Family Foundation, the Schmidt Family Foundation, and Gavin Salmonese, LLC. The World's theme music is composed by Ned Porter. The World is a co-production of GBH Boston and PRX.
PRX.